This is Mrs. Banotho, and we're going to be reading Cinderella in 3 parts. Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a gentleman who took for his second wife the proudest and haughtiest woman that was ever seen. She had 2 daughters who were just like her in every way, bad disposition and all. The husband had a young daughter of his own, but she was sweet and good. She took after her mother, who had been the best in the world. The marriage ceremony was hardly over when the stepmother's temper flared up. She could not abide this young girl, whose goodness made her own daughters seem more hateful than ever. She gave her the vilest household tasks. It was Cinderella who scoured the pots and scrubbed the stairs, Cinderella who polished the bedchamber of Madame, and also those of her daughters. Cinderella slept on a wretched straw pallet in a miserable garret away up in the top of the house. Her sisters lay on beds of the latest fashion in fine chambers with inlaid floors and great mirrors in which they could admire themselves from the tops of their silly heads to the bottoms of their feet. The poor girl put up with everything. She dare not complain, even to her father. He would only have scolded her because, alas, he was tied hand and foot to his wife's apron strings. When her work was done, Cinderella would creep to the chimney corner and sit there in the ashes, earning for herself the nickname Cinderseat. But her younger stepsister, who was not quite so rude as the elder, gave her the name of Cinderella, and Cinderella she was, in spite of her rags. However, Cinderella was 100 times more beautiful than her sister, for all their fine clothes. Now, it happened that the king's son was to give a ball. He invited everyone who was anyone, including our 2 young misses, for they cut quite a figure in the land. They were delighted with themselves, busy as you please, choosing their costumes and headdresses to go with them. More work for Cinderella, for it was she who starched their linen and puffed their ruffles, chitter-chatter of nothing from morning to night, but what they would wear and how they would look. "I," announced the elder, "shall wear my cherry velvet with the English trim." "As for me," said the younger, "I have nothing but my usual petticoat, but to make up for that, I shall wear my cloak of flowered gold and my diamond circlet, which is not to be sneezed at either." They sent for the best hairdresser to pile their curls into 2 horns. None but the best beauty patches would do. They called in Cinderella to ask her advice, for she had very good taste in these matters. Cinderella gave them the best advice in the world and even offered to dress their hair, which of course was what they really wanted in the first place. While she was working over them, they would say to her, "Cinderella, now wouldn't you just like to go to the ball?" "Oh, you are making fun of me. A ball is not for such as I." "Ha! You're right. Cinderseat at a ball." How people would laugh, and they laughed themselves at the very thought. Someone else would have made nests of their head, but not Cinderella. She was good. She dressed them perfectly. The 2 sisters were in such a twitter of excitement that for 2 days they hardly took time to eat. They strained and snapped a dozen corset strings, pulling them too tight in order to shrink their waists. All day long they paraded in front of the looking-glass. At last, the happy day arrived. They departed, and Cinderella followed them with her eyes as long as she could. When she could no longer make them out, she began to cry. It was all in tears that her godmother found her. "Why, what is the matter, my child?" I wish. Cinderella was so choked with tears that she could not get her words out. Now, Cinderella's godmother was really a fairy. She said to her, "You wish you could go to the ball, is it not so?" "Oh, yes," sighed Cinderella. "Well, just be a good girl," said her godmother. "I'll see that you go." She took Cinderella into her chamber and said, "Now, go into the garden and bring me a pumpkin." Cinderella ran to look for the most beautiful pumpkin she could find and carried it back to her godmother. How on earth could a pumpkin take her to the ball? Cinderella could not guess. Her godmother scooped the pumpkin all out, leaving only the rind. Then she touched it with her wand, and just like that, the pumpkin turned into a beautiful coach, gilded with pure gold. The fairy godmother then went to look for the mouse trap. In it were 6 sprightly mice. She told Cinderella to lift the door of the trap, and as each mice scampered out, she tapped him with her wand. Each mouse was instantly turned into a handsome, spirited horse, and there, all in all, was a fine set of 6 horses of a beautiful, dappled mouse gray. Now for a coachman. I'll go see, said Cinderella, if there's a rat in the rat trap. We can make a coachman out of him. You are right, said her godmother. Go see. Cinderella brought the rat trap. In it were 3 plump rats. The fairy chose the one that had the most handsome whiskers. When she touched him with her wand, there was a sleek coachman with the most elegant mustaches you've ever seen. Then the fairy godmother said to Cinderella, now go into the garden. Behind the watering pot, you will find 6 lizards. Bring them to me. Cinderella had hardly fetched the lizards when her godmother turned them into 6 footmen, who hopped up behind the carriage in their fancy livery and lace and held on as if they had never done anything else in their entire lives. And that is the end of part 1.